Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Brian C.P. Steele, and I'll be your nerd today and every day. And you'll note by my lovely extra dental work today that it is Halloween. So happy Halloween to the people who celebrate and the people who do not. I hope that you just don't rain on someone else's parade and we can all get along just fine. So I'm not all dolled up. I was going to do like full clown scary makeup thing, and then I realized that I didn't have any of that stuff nearby. So instead I found my old 30 Days a Night teeth. Found out they still fit, which is cool. I haven't worn these in a while. They realized that they're wicked sharp. Like, they hurt if I bite on myself. And I won't keep them in for very long, but I wanted to at least celebrate a little bit. Happy Halloween, and I'm gonna be. Well, sure, I'll be wearing them later when I'm passing out candy to the kids that come up to the house this evening. Let's see. We always like to do the week in the life of Bryan, and so let's get these out so I can stop lisping, because I feel like I'm very self-conscious about that for being on camera and doing that. But for all of you 30 Days of Night fans out there, which is my favorite vampire movie and comic book, I have this to tell you. All right, let me get these things out. It's not pleasant to look at, so if you don't like, excessive spit and things, look away now. See? No fuss, no muss. I'm going to take a drink because my mouth tastes like prosthetic. Which I'm pretty sure is the first time I've ever said that before. All right, so the week in Bryan. Let's take a look at it before we get into today's topics. The week in Bryan is, frankly, it has been a good week. I've gotten a lot of work stuff done. I have gotten. Not only did I get the final edits done on a Dungeon in a Box program, but it sounds like I'm going to be doing another one. So fortuitous as that today is Halloween, or when you guys might be seeing this earlier, when I'm filming it, it's Halloween. One of the things that I was asked to do for Dungeon in a Box was a spooky one-shot adventure. Basically, kind of amp up the horror theme and things, and it became a free handout, a free PDF giveaway thing for people who subscribe to Dungeon in a Box. It sounds like they're going to get that, they get like the map and stuff, but like it's not a box in and of itself. It's just sort of a, hey, thanks for being awesome. Here's a little one-shot thing for you can use. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to write. It was a lot of fun to put together and plan. It's got some neat twists and turns in it, a couple of cool NPCs, if I do say so myself. And I think that if you are even remotely interested in being a DM or running some stuff at your local stores, pop onto the Dungeon in a Box website and at least get the first box. See what's up. See if it's something that you want to be interested in the future. Excuse me. Let's see what else. I have been doing a lot of emailing and things on behalf of Big Child, trying to drum up some business and put the finishing touches on what I hope will be one of our first games over at Big Child. But we have to, still play testing to be done, and You know, obviously art needs to be made, and there's assets that still need to be, you know, there's a lot to be done still for that. But I'm excited that we're taking our first steps toward hopefully releasing some products that aren't solely miniature and art based. Although the stuff that the creative team does, the artistic team does with miniatures is astounding. If you ever get a chance to go to the Big Child Creatives Facebook or their website and just take a quick tour around, it is something else. These guys, I've been painting for 30 years, and the things that they can do with a brush is breathtaking. So keep your eyes peeled for more cool stuff from there. My wife started her new job this week. Seems to be going well. So she is seems to be happy, and it's again steps in the right direction to get us back, kind of moving up to speed where we were before. A lot less stress, a lot more free time. That's the whole goal. And then let's see, anything else? Oh yeah, totally forgot. Last weekend was Dragonfall, which the Dragonfall guys had me out as a guest to run some events and things. It was a fun show. It really was. Like, there were a lot of people there. There was a huge, like, bring your own computer LAN party tournament thing for like Counter-Strike and Super Smash Brothers, and I was not expecting half of this ballroom to be dominated by computer games. There was a bunch of 40K tournaments, a couple of Age of Sigmar tables I saw. It was definitely more video and war game related than role playing. I was a little disappointed that my role-playing events that we had scheduled in, with the exception of a nice table full of people for the Dungeon in a Box stuff, really was kind of a lack. There was almost no hubbub about it. Didn't really get anything moving on it, which it makes me sad that was opportunity wasted. I think next year, if the guys will have me out again, we will do things a little differently. One of the things that I did notice that they had at Dragonfall, they had the Pathfinder Adventure League or whatever, the Pathfinder Club or whatever is the official, backed by Paizo thing. They had those tables were generally pretty filled up, and I know some of that is because when it comes to like the Pathfinder Society or the Adventure League, you get benefits for being at multiple games. At every game, you don't want to miss events and things. And I think that because they have that extra reason to want to come and play in these special convention events, that it was easier to get those people on board than it was to get random stragglers to come try, Shadowrun 6th edition or, play a Ravenloft game with me, that sort of thing. So I think if we do this again next year, there will definitely be some different advertising put into place. And I think almost more importantly, I will spend a lot more time drumming up business on the Dragonfall page itself, rather than my page, rather than the channel here, because you never know who is or isn't seeing that kind of stuff, and if they're not already a fan, they might not care whether or not they come and play with me. So learning is what it is, but I have always had really good luck at other shows, but this was the first time that they had done any role-playing stuff. So hopefully, next year we'll come back around and we'll do something better. That being said, I did still get to play in some cool events. I got to play in my first Shadespire tournament. I play the little goblins, little night goblins, and I fully expected to go to this event and just get destroyed because I've only played 2 games before, and one of them was like a half-ass. We barely were we it was like we barely knew the rules, and I got obliterated. Um, but that so went into this tournament, and my first match was against a bunch of skeletons, one of the undead factions. There's a bunch of undead in Shadespire. What the skeleton based faction, and I ended up winning like 14-6. It was a pretty significant victory, hot big morale boost for me. Um, Felt real good, and then went into the second round, and I fought the Ghoul faction. Apparently, it's one of the new ones, or newer ones, and I got my butt kicked. I apparently um, uh, was not, because I was not aware of some of the things the ghouls could do. Excuse me. I set myself up for some pretty ugly combos, and oh, what do you mean I can't dodge with my guy who can only dodge? Bleh. It was pretty rough. It was good. I still scored a bunch of points, but not enough to win, and definitely not enough to separate the men from the boys, so to speak. But it did score me enough points when it came down to standings. Even though I didn't win the day, I did get second place. And I scored a handful of little acrylic tokens and a bunch of like promo cards and things. So it's fun. And again, it was a good time. I was there just really to enjoy myself and play against other people who I don't get to see or maybe have never met before. That's always fun for me, is to sit across the table from someone new. And I got to do that a few times at the Shadespire thing. But the highlight, with the exception of social interactions, which I got to hang out with some friends of mine from back in the CMON days, and got to spend some time and eat some amazing deep dish pizza with my buddy Dan from Tectonic Studios. So Tectonic Dan, that's what he's been going. He goes by, has been for years. He is the owner, operator, manager, artiste of Tectonic Crafts Arts, or Tectonic Arts Crafts. It's Tectonic Studios. That's all I know, and I'll put the link up in the description. He makes laser cut MDF like movement trays and army trays, to like army transport trays, and paint racks, and he makes some really cool, like, they fit together piece terrain. Basically, he's a wizard with a laser, with an MDF laser, and I got to see some of his newer stuff, and get to hang out with him. But most importantly, I really want to like prop up. I'm always a big fan of someone who has a skill that I couldn't, for the like you could sit me in front of a computer and a laser, and it would take me months to figure out how to make a single movement tray, let alone what the kind of wizardry this guy puts together. So I'm always impressed to see these cool new things that he comes out with, and he's just a ton of fun. He's a great guy to be around, and if you get a chance to shop his stuff or meet him at a show, tell him I said hi, and tell him I sent you. Maybe he'll give you a free hug or something. I don't know. But yeah, but so aside from all the social interactions, my height of my show was probably Saturday evening. We did a charity Dark Age tournament through extralife.org, specifically the Dice Heroes, which they gave me a cool coaster. This is the symbol for the Dice Heroes. Dice Heroes! But so little background. I'm sure most of you already know this, and I've said it before. Dark Age is a skirmish, a sci-fi, an apocalyptic sci-fi skirmish game that was for many, many years in the possession of Cool Mini or Not, and then it went to then Cool Mini or Not turned into CMON, and then CMON apparently turned into Come On Limited. I don't know, like there's something going on with the branding. But as a game, that was my baby for many, many years when I was over at CMON. And um, it had it in those last few years before uh, as a company, CMON changed, and the attention, the production money went to other projects, and Dark Age kind of got set on the back burner until eventually it sort of got closeted. As far as I know, they still own it. I'm gonna openly sit here. I don't think they're looking to sell it. I don't know. I'm no longer with the company. I don't have that information. What I do know is that I had a lot of plans for that game. A lot of stuff already written, a lot of notes. I had units already planned out for almost the next year worth of releases, if not longer. After when they kind of halted production. Um, and the community for Dark Age was and is probably still one of the best miniature gaming communities out there. I would put it on par with just about anything, and the only thing that comes close, I think, now is like the Dust 1947 people. The Dust crew come real close to having that kind of camaraderie and that friendship and love and whatnot for the game. And so seeing Dark Age still played in communities and seeing their Facebook posts, still popping up, and hey, I made all these proxies for these cool things that never got models, or hey, in my local store we just ran an event, there were 8 people there, like that warms my heart to no end, and to know that my game was going to get played at this show for charity, to earn money for charity. It's just I love it. It shines, and I wish I wish money was no object, and I wish that I could wave my magic wand and bring Dark Age back full strength, and uh, just slam all of those ideas that I had out and get those models made, and get that story told, and get those people playing again. The people who have backed off because the production has kind of halted, because we were going so strong and so heavy, and then it all kind of came down. Um, but so being invited to play in this charity event was a highlight. It really was. Not only was it fun to play with people from my friend Owen, who was one of my most attentive and most prized playtesters during the Dark Age times, who he was part of the Dark Age playtesting before I was even on the CMON team, um, uh, who also randomly lived in my hometown for a few years, and then moved out to like Massachusetts. It was weird. It was weird. But so Owen was there, and a bunch of other people that I know from the Facebook groups and from the old CMON days were there, plus some new faces, people who just got into the game. People who have gotten into the game since after CMON stopped producing new stuff for it. That just goes to show you how much, if you've got a good story and you've got good models and you've got a good game, that even if someone pulls the plug on it, they're gonna see, there's gonna be new players that see it and go, man, I wish I could get more stuff for this. And my heart goes out to all these people, and I want to help as much as I can, which is why I put all my stuff, my proxies and things on eBay, because I want to keep it going. But I digress. The tournament, we played 3 rounds. We had a great time. I won once and lost twice, I think. No, I tied once. I went 1-1-1. I tied once, I lost once, and I won once. had a blast. I was playing my Earthcaster Geary, which is an army that didn't even get all of its stuff before the production halt. Um, Several of my guys were proxies that I have built and now sell on eBay. Consider it was like I was trying to drum up business. Um, but it was just a good time. Some beautifully painted models, uh, interesting combinations that I wasn't expecting to see, and a lot of good fun. And the people who run it, they run the way they run the event is you can buy. Basically, you can buy these little gemstones. Rupees is what he was calling them because they're based off of the Adventures of Zelda gemstone. Um, Trademark apparently. But for a certain number of rupees, they were $1 a piece, and for a certain number of rupees, you could throw in a bucket and you could do special things. Like you could say, "Here, I'm going to put 5 rupees in. I'm going to put 5 in the bucket." And my character is going to get an extra action this turn, or I'm going to spend 1 and re-roll a die, or I'm going to spend 3 and not have my dude blow up in his own face. Like it was just neat stuff. It's like little things that in a cutthroat tournament setting, no one's going to want that kind of stuff because, oh man, you bought your way to victory. You bought your way out of a hole. But when you're playing for charity, that's the whole point, is to buy your way into the next level. Buy yourself into a good game because it's going to a good cause. And Ricky Estrada, who's ran it. First off, great guy. Amazing guy, and he was running the event. And just like he runs the ones in Adepticon and most of the other conventions where you'll see a Dark Age charity event, it'll probably be because of Ricky. He looked like he was having a good time. We had some people that came by to watch, to hang out, talk shop before and after rounds, that kind of thing. It was easily the highlight of my convention, was getting to hang out with some Dark Age people, talk shop, talk other. Even when we got off the topic of Dark Age, we started talking about other things, other games that have gone away that we would love to see come back in some fashion. Again, if money were no object, if I had a magic genie wand that was like, and poof, this game is back and I want to be the one that makes it happen. So that was really what it came down to. It was just a really good time. Good food, good people, just a solid a solid event, and I look forward to getting more of those kind of things to happen in the future. Like it's just fun. It's a good time. All right, so I have rambled on for quite a bit about the week in Bryan because I had a show last week and I wanted to bring you guys up to speed. But so I have to let you know about the topic of today's event is the using spooky and scary in your role-playing games. And it is inspired by this fabulous shirt from Armor Class 10, my show's sponsor. That's got obviously either a lots of little one-eyed critters or a beholder, which, come on, it's a beholder. And it says, "Eyes see you." It's a spooky shirt. And I thought that it would be nice for Halloween and with spooky shirts and to talk about when you're running a role-playing game, using spooky and scary elements in it. Now, I say spooky and scary because I think that they are two separate things. It might be weird. Spooky is more fun, charming. Nightmare Before Christmas is spooky. It is not scary. Even the Oogie Boogie Man, when he gets at his worst, he's still a big pillow filled with bugs. Unless you have a particular hiccup against bugs, he's not scary. He's just oogie spooky. Whereas I think that having like a mentally deranged serial killer in your game, that's scary more than spooky, even if he dresses like a clown. Um, or something that's not. I know a lot of people out there are like, clowns are scary as hell. Even just like a chipmunk or a Muppet or whatever. Um, there are, I think, when it comes to role playing games, there is a time and a place for everything. And spooky can be inserted in just about anywhere. Spooky it can be as easy as morning mist, a morning fog that makes everything sort of muffled, and you can only see 5 feet in front of your face, and you can hear the wolves and the coyotes in the distance. You know, but you're not like trying to make someone sweat. You're just basically trying to set the stage. I think spooky's all about setting the stage. Scary is about, okay, no, now is when I want my players to sweat. I want them to literally be like, oh, okay, got to deal with this thing, or let's avoid this thing, or whatever. And I think that they've got different places in the game, in a game, and it also kind of depends on the kind of game. Like, for instance, if you were running a Ravenloft game, Ravenloft is in and of itself a horror setting, both thriller, like emotional horror, and filled with monsters. And I think that it might actually be much harder to do a spooky theme versus a scary theme in a Ravenloft game, because if you try and make it spooky, where it's like, ooh, spooky, you kind of deflate the essence of the demiplane of dread. This place is a interdimensional prison for the cursed souls of reality, and you're like, oh, spooky. It's not going to be quite the same. Whereas I think if you're playing in a very childlike, fun, maybe very heavy fae, like changeling game, you might see more spooky than scary until it's time to unveil the scary. Or like a Vampire the Masquerade game, there's probably gonna be a lot of scary, but a lot of it's gonna be personal scary. It's gonna be, overcoming your own beast and your own fears, rather than the scary setting, rather than scary monster jumping out, because it's not that style of game. For the most part, again, there are obviously exceptions to the rule for everything. And so as I kind of wanted this episode to be sort of fun and Halloween and whatnot, I asked Twitter and several D&D groups on Facebook to give me 10 creatures from D&D that they would like to see either spookified or scary, made like a kind of a proposal or a plot hook or something that makes these things spooky or scary or spooky or whatever for use in a role-playing game. Like, if someone was like, all right, draw a random monster and this is the bad guy of the day, but they want to keep it serious, they want to keep it scary, that's kind of what I did here. Is I asked the audience and was like, hey, what do you guys got for me? And it took most of the morning due to slow retweeting and the like. But I've got all 10, and then I added one at the end. Well, technically, I added the 10th, and then I added an 11th at the end, based off of someone else's really good idea. I was like, I can't cap it off if that's a really solid thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go down the list and come up with reasons why, some plot hooks and things, why you could use these in your games to kind of Halloween up, to spooky up, or scary up the circumstance. All right, so the first one we got was the Nothic from James Doe, or as I know him, Jamie Doe. I've known Jamie for 20 years. We went to college together, lived next door to one another during college. We're on the college radio together for a short period of time. All around awesome guy. One of my best friends ever going through those college years. And so it's nice to see that he posted this on here. So Jamie, this, for those of you who don't know, that's a Nothic. Boop, boop, boop. This one-eyed creepo. He is a man-sized monster who his eye emanates this like radiation or energy or everything that withers flesh from bone. Um, some pretty gross stuff if you think about it. And so I don't think it'd be very hard to make a Nothic or a group of Nothics just as straight up, here's a nasty encounter. Like spooky wise, those that big green eye, how creepo would it be? You know, if your characters are held up at a farm, you know, you're hanging out with the farmer and his farmer's daughter to crash the night, and then out past the cattle fence, you know, you hear the cattle, you know, the cattle's going crazy, the sheeps are sad, you know, everything's topsy-turvy. You look out the window and you can just see these bright green eyes, but not two, but not a pair, like just like a one here and then a one there and then one there, kind of bouncing around and climbing over things, and we're just this like kind of glowing green eye. Oh my gosh, I would totally be like, all right, well, we need to go out and check it out, but be careful because glowing green eye. Yeah, I think that's like the spooky level that you could go. You wouldn't have to go and get grisly with it. Just you know, these got these sickly glowing green eyes floating around out there in the darkness. And then to crank it up to like the scary level, oh, I think that's easy. They are intelligent creatures that live off of this like they feast on this like withered flesh parts and stuff. You could totally have one be, you know, like a local, you know, like just one Nothic that like lives in the bowels of a castle, or in the sewers under a town, and it like preys on, like it hunts the cemetery, you know, follows recent, like it always shows up, you know, it does great like recent grave robbing because, you know, it's easy to wither their already dead flesh. You know, like you could find, you know, you characters, you think that it's going to be just a regular grave robbing because these bodies just keep getting, you know, oh, someone died, they get put in the ground, and like the next day their grave's overturned and the coffin's empty except for like shreds of what they were. And so you get ready for like, you know, the players get ready for a necromancer or a ghoul pack, or, you know, something else that they're gonna take on this thing, and they get in there and they see this creepy withered dude hunched over, you know, you use his claws to like dig open the grave, and he's like irradiating this corpse, withering it down to like people jerky so he can, you know, I think that could probably be, even if it's not just one of them, like maybe a whole colony of Nothics that live underground, or live near like a battleground or something along those lines. I think that the idea of them of player characters catching them using their like eye beam radiation thing, not as a weapon, but as basically like a necrotic heat lamp to like bake the flesh off of bones, and then that would be creepy and awesome. I would love to fall in on that scene and be like, all right, now what do you guys do? You know, he's not hurting anybody. Dude's already dead. What do you do? So thank you, James. Thank you, Jamie. That was awesome. Next one we got was for the Rust Monster, classic critter, from Chad Schlesinger, another gentleman that I've known for a really long time, through my high school and college years. So Rust Monsters, for the uninitiated, are exactly what they sound like. They are a monster that eats metal. It eats the oxidized flakes of rust that it creates using its little magical tail butt thing. So let's see, is it specifically? Oh, it's its antenna. Not sorry, I thought it was its tail, but it's not. It's its big antenna. So it looks kind of like a mole cricket over here. Oh, that's the Sahag one. Sorry, wrong guy. Over here. So rust monsters, they look kind of like mole crickets, and they're sort of big. I mean, they're about the size of like a really big dog or a small pony. Um, Smaller ones have been known to exist. In fact, I'm going to tangent momentarily. I once had a naked berserker dwarf that refused to wear armor, that we got into an old school pit trap that had a rust monster in it, and I decided that I was going to use the rust monster because their tails, the old school tail on a rust monster, the new one has like kind of this like a flowery thing. The old one had looked like it looked like a T, like almost like a hammer at the end of the tail. Um, and my character, the crazy silly strong dwarf guy, um, basically used a small rust monster at the tail, used him as kind of a flail to attack a bunch of armored orcs, and it was ridiculous and it was silly, but it was one of those things, spur of the moment decisions. I'm gonna hit somebody with this guy that makes armor fall off. So rust monsters, as I mentioned, when their little antennas touch things, metal turns to rust and falls apart. And for a low-level party, that can be tragic. Plate mail armor is expensive. Swords, like castle forged swords, are expensive. For a low-level party that doesn't have just piles of gold and piles of magic items and stuff, a rust monster can be a real nightmare. And I think to spookify a rust monster, um, you would just basically you wouldn't show the monster. You would show little like traces, piles, flakes of rust in places. Like the hinges of a door the door is still there, but the hinges and the doorknob are missing, and there's just like little smears of rust powder on the ground. you know, some players might pick up on it. Others might go, "This is weird. This is a strange thing." Um, or do you do something like, uh, the player characters find a group of bodies. They find a casualties from another party, and all of their weapons have been like dissolved down to the hilt. All the spears are stabs, and like the dude's breastplate's got like this giant rend in it that doesn't look like it's been clawed open. It almost looks like it's been dissolved and the edges are all rusty. Like you can really crank up the narrative of what a rust monster is capable of, because I mean it's basically like the scary factor of acid, except it doesn't burn you. It just makes metal go away. And that could be really frightening depending on what you're playing and who you're playing. Um, and like what the circumstance is surrounding it. Like there's nothing that says that, like, let's say that you were given this badge of office, this fully emblazoned cleric shield or something, and a rust monster gets a hold of it, and now you're like, well, okay, that didn't work. Like rust monsters are really, you gotta think about them, and I think that they could be a very cool setting tool, especially because they are still kind of animals. They're not like demons or anything. They do naturally occur. Um, I think it'd be kind of cool if maybe like an area or a village, like they know that they live near or on rust monster breeding grounds, and so like the player characters get into this town and it's super weird. Nothing's made of metal. Everything's wooden pins or swords or cudgels or bone, like, and not primitive, like, oh, we don't have metal. It's just, no, they've remade a ton of stuff that used to be metal with different, like they use a lot of stone, but it's all polished and pretty. It's not like, Stone Age flint or anything. It's definitely they've got the skills. And I think that you could have a really cool backdrop setting of this little village where like the player characters walk in and everybody's astonished, like, oh my god, you've got chainmail on. You've got a quiver full of arrows that have metal heads. Whoa, what are you doing? And I think that you could really kind of amp up for something that is a basic D&D monster, a basic critter. You could really amp up the scare factor with the idea that these guys, that the locals like, no, the rust monsters here are voracious, and it's taken us generations, but we've stopped giving them stuff to eat. And or like the local iron mines are plagued with them. Like you could really do something with that. And I think scary rust monsters tend to be a little goofy looking, so it might be hard to make them scary, but you could do a cool moment. Especially like, let's say you've got a character. Oh my gosh, let's say you've got a character who's playing Warforged, which is an Eberron race of basically like metal and wood automatons that have gained sentience. How terrifying would a rust monster be? Even if, deep inside, I'm alive. It's not going to just dissolve me at a touch. It's not like that. But what if it was? You're obviously not going to shove your hand in his antenna. Hey, let me see if I come back with any fingers. That could be really cool. I would love to see a rust monster rampage through like like an armory. Like the local armory. In the middle of a fight, like a pair of rust monsters come charging through, and one of them just like dives into the storeroom. Oh no, that's not good. What's going on? Like it could, again, it only really has one major thing that it does, but that one major thing that it does is scary in the right circumstance. The next one comes from, what do we got here? From Chris Roderman, it's either Rod or Roderman. I hope I'm not screwing that up. And he just listed Nols. So Nols are, so I got page 163. Nols are kind of humanoid hyenas that follow a creepy bloodshed god, Yanogu. And anytime that you've got a species of critter that doesn't commonly speak English, or common as the case may be, probably has very distinct mannerisms. Imagine a society of Nols. Hyenas are very societal. They're matriarchal. They're extremely pack oriented. But like when it comes down to it, like thinking about the factoids, hyenas have jaws that can crush bone. They splinter bone. They frequently chew it down to nothing and swallow it. One of the strongest bites, the spotted hyena has one of the strongest bites in the mammal, like in mammalia, period. Like, just like, and not even like strongest based off of, well, it's only because his head's this big. No, I mean like thousands of foot-pounds of pressure, because these things are built to destroy bone. But like, yeah, imagine that sort of veracity, just this voracious, critter, and then you give them sentience, you give them a society, you give them the will to go and seek out others and try and raid them, and all in the name of this bloodshed murder god Yanogu. That's a terrifying bad guy that could go for many levels. So you could have the Nols. Yeah, there's only like 3 types of Nols in the monster manual, but there's nothing that says you couldn't crank up the level on some Nols and make like make some like awesome Yanogu honor guard that ride around on giant hyenas, or high, there's already like a high priest of Yanogu in there, but like take it up a notch and be like, this isn't a priest of Yanogu, this is like a paladin. A paladin servant to the murder god of Nols. How badass would that be? And that dude would be frightening. He would be terrifying. And so to do spooky versus scary, spooky's easy. They make noises. They're off in the middle of the night. On the you're laying there in camp, setting up your watch. You look out over the horizon, and on the top of the hill, you can see just scattered dots that look like the little hyenas. And there's the flat, like every once in a while, there's like the double flash of bright eyes in the dark. Like you could easily spooky out a pack hunting creation or a pack hunting society like Nols. Scary to scare them up. You just crank like these things. You know, you put the characters in a situation where they can witness a feast. Like there's a table, but maybe the table's really only used to hold like bowls and goblets of ale and lager, and maybe they've got their own like fermented milk or whatever. But then like when it comes down to the actual feasting, it is zero manners, no utensils. Who the hell has utensils when you've got jaws that can crush bone to nothing? Like over at the end of the table, one guy goes to like grab the last pig leg or whatever, and the other one grabs his arm, and it's like, nope, we're going at, and like they roll off to the side and start battling over the last pig leg. Like you could easily make your player characters realize that if we are caught by these guys, or if we don't find a way to circumvent the animosity between us and this Knoll village or town or whatever, that we could very well be that last pig leg. These guys have no issues biting and killing each other, let alone us. You could easily make it so that Nols become your main bad guy, because they're smarter than the average schmuck. They're not they're not dumb. They're not you're not gonna see that you're not gonna see them be like, okay, well, we'll just raid you a couple times and then be done. No, if they've got like a king there, if they've got this dark heart of Yanogu here, they're gonna be a real threat, and they are gonna have no trouble stealing kids, killing livestock, maiming them. Just raise a farm to the ground and maim all of the livestock they don't need. Or even better, just claim the farm and just eat what they can and drag back the rest, because carrion is it might not be as good as a fresh kill, but it's still something they can munch on. Like Knowles could really be something fierce. All right, I realize it's on the time. I gotta speed this up a little bit. The next one we got was from one of my dearest, and I love her to death, Tanya Tabler. She is an owlbear fanatic, and so she says owlbear is her choice. I think owlbears are awesome, and I think that they're cute in their own weird way. And I think that you could easily make a spooky owlbear encounter by incorporating owlbear cubs, incorporating maybe some kind of hibernation or some kind of local legend about a particular owlbear. Maybe hey, there's an albino owlbear that lives in the evergreen, forest. And there's 1,000 gold piece bounty on its head or whatever. You could easily turn owlbears into sort of that boogeyman in the dark. It's definitely weird. Especially for newer players who might not have ever seen anything like that before. You'd be like, okay, this huge mammal stomps out into the clearing, and it's got claws and the head of an owl. What? No way. It could be. I think that would be pretty cool. Making them scary, again, there is not much scarier than the reality of nature. And an owlbear, you could, as a storyteller, especially if the player characters get a chance to see an owlbear eat or hunt or cough up an owl pellet the size of a football, and there's like children's bones in it, or like a full pixie skeleton, that that could be enough to make a player go, I don't want to mess with owlbears. That's gross. Let's see. Another good friend, Bryan Van Skyok. He put up there just gnomes. Now, anybody who's known me for a long time knows that I've got a weird thing against gnomes. I just, I've never been a fan of gnomes as player characters. I've never used them very much. As NPCs, they're very rarely trustworthy. I don't know. I love halflings, I love dwarves. So it's not a short person thing. There's just something weird about gnomes, unless they're like specifically like tinker gnomes or like they fall into like a specific category. Generally speaking, they bug me. So making them spooky is easy. You can goth out a gnome society, not like make them straight up like Svirfnebly, like the deep gnomes, but you could make a like on the darker side of invention gnome culture. Uh, and then scary. It would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to make gnomes like traditional gnomes scary, but I think you could do it. And I think you could do it by playing up on the fact that there are so many places they can get into that others can't. They do have illusion. Like they tend to be good at illusion magic, so you can have a lot of false walls and oh, welcome to my maze. And there's definitely something to be said for yeah, you're a 6.5 foot tall dragonborn hero, roar, and there's this 2 foot tall little sinister thing that's looking at you all wild eyed and crazy with a straight razor in his hand, and he's like, "I'm coming to get you." You could easily turn a gnome encounter into a scary encounter. Victoria H, which I didn't have your last name, so I hope that's good enough. Victoria H says Satyrs. Now, so Satyrs, generally speaking, are good guys, or at least on the neutral side of things. But I think it'd be very easy to use their more traditional background, um, their more traditional background of being this sort of Lothario luring young ladies out into the woods to be part of Feywild shenanigans. I think that you could have a pretty cool abduction based storyline using satyrs. Spooky wise, their pipes, you hear them from all over the glen. You can hear them through the trees, or like you have the all the young ladies in the town whistle the same tune. It's the same weird, and they all do it. They all do it absent-mindedly. Like when they're not paying attention, they're churning butter or whatever, and they're doing that thing, and they're darning socks or stringing bows for getting ready to go out on a hunt, and they all are using this same tune because what they don't know is you know every other evening or every third night or whatever, the satyrs come into town and charm all the ladies out of their thing to come party in the woods with the witches and the other fae. It could be some pretty cool stuff. Scary satyrs can be. I am of the belief that, and this is one of those things where you kind of probably want to know your audience, know your players, whether or not they would be amenable to this sort of thing. Is one of the scariest things out there is an overly aggressive suitor, or someone who is, just all emotion all the time, easily angered, goes to zero to frenzy, the angry drunk. And I think that satyrs, if you wanted to crank it up to the scary level, you could make satyrs into like like the was it Bacchanalia, like that level of just frenzied hedonism cut loose, and then mix it with a high amount of anger when people start trying to stop them from doing these horrible things. I think you could probably turn that into a pretty cool scene. Howard Green, again, it's either Green or Grine it's Grein. I'm gonna say Green. Howard Green says the Thry-Kreen. So the Thry-Kreen are they're an insect race. I love them. I've loved them ever since. I mean, I'm a huge insect person, but I loved them ever since they became a player character race in Dark Sun a million years ago. And they've changed a little bit over time, but they've more or less stayed the same way. If I can find them. They've stayed more or less the same when it comes to the specifics. So you got Thry-Kreen, these kind of mantis warrior looking dudes, 4 arms, 2 legs, definite bug. They're super neutral. They tend to they can't speak, but they, with the exception of their own language, and they have kind of limited telepathy. They tend to be in a game with psionics. They tend to be very highly psionic. But I think anytime that you have a somewhat hive-minded society, especially truly alien creatures like these, I think that you could make that into a very, very creepy encounter. You know, like these clickety clacky things that, you know, they don't really pay attention to you. They're not talking to you. They talk to each other. Their antennas are going. I think that could be a really cool encounter, especially if you are not aware that you are entering into their territory. And suddenly, you know, things are built in 3 dimensions. You know, they're not built like a regular, this is the way the gravity is. It's built for people who are maximizing all space and can climb walls and jump 30 feet in a row. You know, like it could be something else. And I think that because they are so weird and alien, and they are so just creepy, like silently bug, you know, like again, a lot of people have issues with insects collectively anyway, and this just cranks it up a notch. This just makes it more so. It also, there's that little bit of, they're obviously sentient. They're obviously intelligent and talking to each other and planning. And so there's just that sort of wall of mystery between the players and these kind of big, semi-frightening mantis people walking around. To pop it up to a scary level, and I'm gonna kind of steal my own thunder on this one. I did a one shot a long time ago, and in that one shot, there was this big like mound, sort of huge hill that was on the other side of a river, and it was, you know, been said for generations, don't go anywhere near it. You know, you can't come by it. It's no one goes there and comes back alive. The moat is there to protect our community, so forth and so on. And then of course somebody gets the bright idea that it's all a ploy, and it's because it's filled with treasure, and, you know, we've seen activity on the mountain. We don't know what it is. We need to investigate it. And so as soon as they cross the river, they break like a 2-century-old treaty with the Thry-Kreen that live inside the mountain. Think of it like a termite hive. And as soon as they cross over into the wilderness surrounding the mountain on this like kind of island, the side of the mountain just like starts to like crumbles out, and it's just a horde of these insect dudes that come out. And, you know, one of those, nobody currently living in the village has any idea that they existed. Nobody knows about this ancient treaty. Everybody's long since dead, but the Thry-Kreen remember, because they're a creepy hive mind and their queen has been living forever. and it's just, chaos ensues, and it's just this tidal wave of biting, clawing, chitinous monsters that passionlessly just kill livestock. Just the ones that can, the handful of like greater versions that can fly or that have spells, just scoop up livestock, farmers along with them, whatever, and take them back to the hive. Like it could really become a monster movie, like a monster swarm movie based off of this oops, we kicked off the top of the anthill, literally. And I think that would be cool. I think Thri-kreen done scary could be really awesome. Next up, we have the Yuan-ti. The Yuan-ti from Katie. So it says Katie DeDice. I'm assuming that's some kind of Twitter handle, or Katie Double D Ice. I don't know, but it's. I'm gonna go Katie DeDice because it was through one of the role playing groups. So the Yuan-ti, I think are awesome. I actually play a Yuan-ti assassin in a local game, but they are snake people, and they've got different versions of each other. There's the abomination, which is like the highest scary you can go. The Malisons, which are some snake, mostly beefcake. And then there are the purebloods, which almost look human, in all honesty, with some snakiness to them and a lot of high magic and things. The Yuan-ti are a great bad guy. Because they live underground. They live within you can put them in a temple covered in snakes. Think of like a good old school Conan bad guy. Any kind of cult of Set, or anywhere you find a pit of snakes, that sort of feel, that's Yuan-ti written all over it. And I could go into super depth on how to make them to run the gamut, but I don't have to. There are so many movies out there that use snakes and snake monsters to spookify. You just have traps. You have snakes that slither by. You have a pitfall, and oh, here's a bunch of snakes. And the Yuan-ti themselves, they just can be the bad guys in the surroundings. If you want to crank it up to scary, that's easy. These guys they're snake mutant monsters. The dropping from ceilings, slithering out from under floors. Lots of poison use. You could easily make a Yuan-ti community or civilization into the bad guy and make them into a full-on horror like aspect of your game. The next one, this is a good one. I actually forgot. I didn't forget them as a critter, but I forgot that they could be really cool. Is Mimics from Misty Cole. Misty Cole says Mimics. I love Mimics. I love the idea of a creature that shapeshifts into an object or an item, and then lays in wait because they know that people and other sentient beings love their toys, love their things. To make Mimics are spooky by themselves. Like they just are. It's a box that you go to reach in to grab what looks like a dagger at the bottom, and suddenly the lid springs teeth and chomps down on your hand. Or you get a book out of the bookshelf because the label on the side of the book didn't read. It's not in any language. It obviously is different and weird and unique. You go to grab it, and the cover is a little sticky, and you go to open it, and it's a giant mouth, and it's like, rah, it tries to eat your face. Like Mimics are just, they are spooky critters. They are cleverly designed spooky critters. To make them scary, you put just enough spin on the things that they are turning into. So instead of it being a chest, or instead of it being a book, you have a Mimic be a child's doll in the crib, or the downstairs in the dining hall area. There's like one big cool, fancy decanter of like high-end elven wine, or that's what it looks like. And when you go to grab it, the decanter and like all of the bar set, it's a mimic. Like you can do a lot of really good jump scares based off of what the mimic is turned into. Um, I love the idea of uh, live mimics living their life as a particular type of thing. Like they sort of fall into complacency, and so they get some slightly cooler stats or specific things based off of what they turn into. So that could be a ton of fun. Is making mimics into, you know imagine a house of horrors that's filled with mimics. Oh, it could be terrifying. And then the number 10, this is the one that I actually put in because of the t-shirts, is the Beholder. I love the Beholder. Now, everybody, you should know the Beholder. Beholder is on the cover. It's the big, scary ball of an eyeball with a floaty mouth and little eye stalks that do magic things. Now, a lot of people see the Beholder and they go, oh, it's a scary monster. Except Beholders also are really intelligent. And I think the way to make a Beholder encounter either spooky or scary, depending on the level of investment you put into it, is you give them personality. You make a Beholder the kind of almost like an NPC that the characters want to go visit. Oh, how creepy would that be? Where they like you mentioned that it's hovers around the room, and one of its eye stalks is always watching you, or like it has plans, but because of what it is, it can't go do these things. It requires outside help, so you have to work for this Beholder in order for him to do something for you. But then, like, he always lives in this gloomy cave, and every time you go see him, you're positive that it's going to end up being some kind of horrible double cross. Like, you could do a lot with a Beholder if you give him some personality. Um, Now, scary wise, Beholders are scary. They are a snaky ball filled with eyeballs that do different things, and some of the things that their eyes do, like between like death ray and levitate, and like there's a bunch of really scary stuff that their eye stalks can do. Um, if you are inventive as a DM, if you're inventive with what some of those eye stalks are capable of, um, you can make a single Beholder encounter, plus the layer actions that it gets, the legendary actions, because it is one of those old school monsters. You could make a Beholder into like almost like a super villain. Like, you could really make it the prime antagonist of your game, um, and have it do some of these horrible things with these eye stalks, or um, just again, it's a big floating ball of teeth with these eyes floating off of it. um it could be, scary wise, how terrifying would that be if lightning struck outside your window and there's just like a ring of eyes just like hovering there staring at you, or you pass your lantern over a tunnel and you get the predatory flash, that predatory flashback where you see like how a cat's eyes will shine green. You have like 10 and one giant one that all flash that green. And when you flash back, none of them are there. Like, you could really, it is a scary monster. It is the kind of monster that I'm sure leapt out of Gary Gygax's nightmares and was like, okay, I need to make this into something that player characters will vanquish in order to go back to sleep tonight. So that came from me. Because of the T-shirt, because of my Armor Class 10 shirt, and because I just dig Beholders. I wanted to kind of say, they are spooky, they are scary, and they could be more if you give them the right personality and the right mentality. How they interact with the world and how they interact with people. If you use them as just I'm a wandering monster, they're going to get treated like a wandering monster. Oh, kill that thing. But if you treat them as something that has an intelligence of 17 and lives for hundreds of years, it could be something really cool and scary. Now the last one came from this actually. This last thing we're going a little long, but this last 11th vote comes from Chris Redmont, and he plainly said humans. And I was going to stop at 10 and I was going to cap it off at the beholders, but when I saw that someone had said, no, I think some of the best scary, spooky stuff out there are just people. I had to include this because I agree, and I'm going to say, rather than humans, I'm going to just say sentient humanoids, because anybody who's capable of having a thought process and conversation and a personality and a civilization, and more importantly, anybody who's capable of bucking against any or all of those things in a spectacular way, can be a really cool sociopath. You get a really cool, like, nemesis, based off of, basically just kind of a different version of a player character. You can make these NPCs into, a troop of turn a regular set of human bards into a troop of cannibals. Or you could have, like this one, the creepy hermit elf that no one really stops to talk to, but then the player characters eventually go, okay, well, we need to meet this guy, and he's missing an eye, he's got like some kind of weird mutant like reptile limb, and he warns, don't you go near the old swamp or this could happen to you. Like you could Scooby-Doo the crap out of NPCs. And so that was why I had to include that in there, is that humans or humanoids, they can be just as scary or just as spooky, if not more so, than any of the monsters you find in the monster manual or that you dream up. It's terrifying, the idea of going into a cave and have piercers drop on you from above and eat all your innards when they stab you. That's scary. But it's also scary having the barber in the village be the guy who, once a week, every week, manages to incapacitate somebody in his chair and take him into the basement to sell off his body parts to the ghouls that live in the cemetery. You can make a scary or spooky story out of just about anything. And when you deal with the wide cast of humanoids and what they're capable of, especially if you sort of let your mind wander and go into some of those darker places that people don't like to normally explore inside themselves, you could really make some pretty cool plot lines. All right, so I've gone over and I've gone through my list. I want everybody who is going to go out tonight to have a good, happy Halloween. Do some trick-or-treating, hand out some candy, enjoy yourself, whatever the case may be. For the people who go out this weekend for Halloween parties and stuff, please enjoy yourself. Have a great time. And if you get an opportunity before we see you again next week, as always, have fun, get out there, enjoy yourself, and play some games, because that's what it's all about. See you next week. Feeling all the words later. What the hell am I doing? Happy Halloween.